1.
Good morning. Welcome to Theology 2. We are waiting for some people to come who normally attend here in person, and those most who attend online do not do so live. They do so later. We're getting 30 some, upwards of 40 views, so that's a good thing. So if that's the case and you're watching from home, you can't be late because you're not on any particular schedule. But we're going to get started on time. I don't know. It's not as if the world is waiting for us outside the doors, but we might as well get going so we can get through this material today. So welcome to Theology 2. And the 4th week.
Yes.
So next week will be our last class of just discussion and learning. On the 19th, that's a national holiday, so Carolina will not be here in order to record this or live stream, and so that will be a Wednesday off for the class. And then the final week we'll actually share our thoughts with each other in some form of an essay that I think everyone who did so in Theology 1 found it to be a gratifying and pleasant experience, and all the more so when we could hear each other's stories, because there's a lot of value in that. So let's get started. Lord, thank you for the gift of this day. Thank you for the changing of the seasons to a fair, mild, and maybe even warm day today. You see us through the dark seasons and the light seasons. We pray that we'll remain faithful to you, loyal, and in relationship. In Jesus' name, amen. Karen's here, yay! So I gave you a handout today, and typically what I like to do at the beginning of the class is review. Here we go. They're just coming in droves now. It's a stampede. So I think it's helpful because how easily we forget from one week to the next just what in the world we're doing here. So we start with today at the top of your sheet. Theology 2, as we're doing this, I've tried not to make this theology in terms of does God exist, but what is my experience? So we've been talking about our different experiences and what it means to experience God in a variety of ways. So the first week, we talked about Abraham, who had only experiences. Why did he have only experiences, Betsy?
Because he had no Bible.
He had no Bible. I mean, there you go. We're off to a great start today. So his experience of God was not on the basis of what he had learned in Sunday school or in Bible study. It was just raw, experience in the circumstances of life. So, but for us, I will say that I would not write off theology and say, oh, who cares about what other people say or statements? What matters is my own experience. And I would say yes, to a degree. But your experience will be determined by what kind of idea of God you have. So I've had, over the years, I've been in some really interesting situations, in encampments out in the woods with homeless people. I've been in all kinds of places with people, and with all kinds of different people. And it's not unusual for someone to say to me, I don't believe in God. And I will say, well, tell me about the God you don't believe in. And they'll start to describe. So in other words, they do have an idea of God. They just don't like that particular God. And who can blame them? Because usually when they describe the kind of God they don't believe in, I will say, well, I'm in good company. I don't believe in that God either.
Right.
So your idea of God really does determine your experience of God. Because I would submit to you that your experience of God is based on how you interpret that experience that you're going through. Like I had said, the gathering the backpacks for the orphanage in Mexico, and we took an offering, and the offering was right. I mean, almost exactly within like 10 cents of how much it actually cost us to ship those boxes of backpacks to Mexico. And the guy who was organizing all of this and went to the UPS store to ship them was like, hallelujah. I mean, God is at work. It's
Right.
the exact amount. What more evidence do we need than God is real and God is involved and God cares? And other people said, yeah, right. There are such things as coincidences. So that wasn't God. That was just a coincidence. Now, it all has to do with people's idea of God. The same experience is interpreted differently by people based on their understanding of God. So for Dave, the guy I'm talking about, his God is involved. You know, Jesus said, "Lo, I'm with you always to the end of the age." God is involved. The other people would say, no, God is far distant. We're basically on our own. Never mind all that. So it's all because their God was distant. Their God's not involved. Their God leaves life up to the people themselves. You know, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You know, there's no free lunches around here. That's the kind of God they had. Whereas Dave had a God who was like, wow, generous, gracious, giving, involved. So your experiences are often determined by what kind of God you have. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Bill, you usually pipe in something.
I do. You pretty much outlined what I experience in terms of my own.
Yeah.
Then I look for consistencies to make it real.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not consistent, what I know to be, to your point, it's what the individual knows to be.
Yeah.
So that makes it so inviting because it's either consistent or it's not. So I don't have to guess. So I guess that's what I would have to say.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of my
Sure.
what I experience, what I learn from this church, that church, in other words, whatever is being fed, and then, like you say, my own experiences and what's consistent with the Bible, with what I'm experiencing.
And to go one step further, if you go to a 12-step program, you give your life over to higher power as you understand that higher power, to God as you. So there's not a lot of fussing about what kind of God, what does the God look like, and what's the God's name. It's just a higher power as you understand. So in other words, you have this experience of something helping you recover from addiction, and that's your experience of a God who takes you out of it. Okay, so Abraham had no Bible. He had only his experience. So first he wrote off the idols as God. Remember the story I told you about him whacking all the idols with a stick? Well, the idols can't do anything. He said, they just sit there, so they can't be gods. Then he went to another place where they worship the stars as God. And he says, well, there's got to be something moving the stars, more than the stars. I can't believe this. So finally, he received the word from God. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean with a voice like I'm speaking now. I think we all have different ways of experiencing God speaking to us. So my wife read 1 Samuel 3 on Sunday, where Samuel is hearing the voice of God and doesn't know who it is. Goes to Eli, who's the head priest in the temple. And Eli says, I'm not calling you. Finally, they say, well, this must be God. So God speaks to us in a number of ways. So I don't know that it was an audible voice, but Abraham was convinced that God said, get out of the place where they worship idols, get out of the place where they worship the stars, go to some place that I will show you, and I will be with you the whole way. So Abraham did. And so in the book of Genesis, now we're talking about a Bible again, which is okay. People who did not have a Bible, they had a relationship with God. So to experience God was to relate with God. Noah received the word, build an ark, for the world is going to be destroyed. Jacob wrestled with God and prevailed at a place called Penuel, which in Hebrew means the face of God. Surely I have seen God and lived. But he limped from that point on. And so, Joseph sold into slavery. He didn't have a Bible, but what he had is the experience, his family tradition of this God who called his great grandfather Abraham to go to a place he would show, and then blessed Isaac, and then his father Jacob, and now him. And after all of that, he concluded to his brothers, you meant to harm me, but God meant to bless me. So he had this understanding relationship with God. So the next week, we went to Moses, who had an experience of God in the desert. He had no Bible yet either, but God said, I'll go with you, speak to Pharaoh, tell him to let my people go. The people were let go, and they got into the desert and got into all kinds of mischief. And so Moses concludes, these people don't have a relationship with God the way I do, because Moses would climb to the top of the mountain and meet with God. And when Moses would come back, his face would be glowing because he had met God and been with God. And the people were like, what's with this Moses? So Moses has to write everything down. This is how you're going to worship. This is our religion. So it went from a relationship to religion. Kind of embarrassing, but I'll tell you anyhow. The matter of Abraham's face glowing after he came down from the mountain, being with God, and the people were like, what's going on with Moses? And they'll say, well, he was with God. Wow. When I first started to finally get up the courage to approach Gail and started to talk to her, actually I stuttered to her for quite a while. One time I was with her in the college cafeteria, and we had breakfast or lunch together, and she had to go her way and I had to go mine. So as I'm walking away from that encounter, one of my friends looked at me and said, "The glow, what is going on with you? You look like you're in love." I guess I must have been the glow floating in the air. And ever since then, I understood what was going on with Moses when he came down. So it's a relationship, and there's the joy of the relationship. Yeah. But eventually it turns into religion, as I said, right? And we did our little thing. Are you more religious or more relational? And most everyone here prefers a relationship with God rather than trying to carry out religious rules and practices. But I said, sometimes the best way to experience a good relationship is with some certain practices. So last Friday was our anniversary. So what do I say to Gail? We just have a relationship. Never mind. I said, no, I'll take you out to dinner and we'll be together, celebrate our anniversary. This is a special day. We'll recognize it. And I remember reflecting a little bit over my pan-seared salmon with her about our wedding day and that kind of thing. That's like a religious practice where you have certain days and you do certain things, like baptisms and communion. You need practices and you need a certain order to things, but if that becomes more important than the relationship, then you're faltering. And if it's just relationship, it's hard to share your relationship with Betsy's. You need some common ground. And so we do establish religion and certain practices. Go ahead.
This is a quick thought. What you were saying seems to come into play regarding you don't show it, but it's some anniversary time and you overwhelm a partner, let's say, with gifts. But what about really what they're looking for is all that time in between. So no, you could see that happening. It's our anniversary, just showing you how much I love you. Well,
so you need both ends. You need a good solid relationship, but you need to mark it and observe it and practice it in certain ways. And so the same thing goes with God. So Moses wrote things down so people have a way to experience God. And on your last day, if for you, your experience of God is some religious practice that we do here at church or you've done before, that's okay. That's your experience, and we value that. So, okay, the next week, last week, we were talking about inductive and deductive experiences. Inductive is experiencing God first, and then after the fact, thinking, what just happened? Like Dave had his experience of packing the backpacks in boxes, and afterwards, when everything fell into place just so perfectly, he says, wow, what just happened? Oh, it must be God. So first is experience, then is your reflection and conclusion that you draw from it. Just like Abraham had his experience and then thought about it and came up with some conclusions. Now, deductive is starting first with knowing what it is you're experiencing and then experiencing it. So I know there is this wonderful, terrific young lady who is one of my favorite people in all the world, who whenever she's going to go someplace will go to the website of that place, and she will find out what the parking lot looks like. You figured it out.
I can see her face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wants to know everything about the place she's going before she goes to it, so that when she gets there, she already knows what she's experiencing. Is that correct?
Reconnaissance.
Any unknown place.
It's cool.
Okay, so that is deductive. She's approaching. Deductive is to say, this is who God is, this is how you experience God, these are the facts, and then you have the experience and you say, yeah, I'm experiencing what somebody already told me I was going to experience. That's deductive. And often people don't like religion because they will say it's telling you what you're supposed to think and what you're supposed to do and all that kind of stuff. Well, there is some comfort, isn't there, Carolina, in knowing a little bit about your experience before you experience it. So deductive is not all bad. So that's not Carolina's experience of God. That's her experience of a restaurant or whatever it is she's going to go to. But if she on the last day that we meet wants to talk about her experience of God deductively, well, when I was a young child in Colombia, I went to the Catholic Church and they told me these things. And you know what? I've experienced God in those certain ways over time. And you could say that if you want. Or you could say all those things that I was told, I kind of threw out the window and just had raw experience of the world and of God. And so you get what I'm saying, Carolina, and everybody? Yeah. Okay. So now this week we are venturing into waters that are not really strange. It's a field of study called theological anthropology. And I would imagine if that was what you came up with while playing Scrabble, you'd win the game, because there's a lot of points in all those letters. Theological anthropology is what we are doing in this course. It's a branch of Christian theology that studies the human experience in relation to God. So it really is studying the human being as much or more as it's studying God. It explores the meaning of the human story as it unfolds before, with, and through God. It seeks to answer fundamental questions about the nature, purpose, and destiny of human beings. In other words, why are we here? Why were we created? What is the purpose? And what is our destiny? Is this all there is, or is there more? Who created? How was creation done? What is this world that we're living in from a human standpoint? I mostly got this when I studied at St. John's Catholic theology, because here you don't see anything talking about Bible. It's about who is the human being and how is the human being created, what is the destiny of the human being, and so on. So, okay, so here we are. We're in today. And today I want to talk to you about a book that really is one of my favorite books of all time. It's a short book, 106 pages. You can read. I mean, I've read it 3 times this week already.
Nice.
Not backwards, but forwards. And it's called The Lonely Man of Faith. And it was written by a Jewish rabbi named Joseph Soloveitchik, who in the 1960s was beginning to see that the way the Western world worked in our culture and society functions was going in one particular direction to the exclusion of the other. And he felt as though he was out of the tradition that was being overlooked, that was being set aside, that was considered laughable and irrelevant, because there was a new mode of existence taking place. And that was a mode of existence is where things are about power. It's now about politics. It's now about glory. It's now about achieving. It's now about creating. And he said, well, what about those of us who are not power hungry, who are not seeking fame and fortune in the world, who are not trying to master the world? What about us people who are curious about who is this who's involved in my life, but I cannot see? What is this world that I'm living in? And how does it function? And why am I here? And why is there even a universe in the first place? There has to be answers to these questions that I'm asking. And so Soloveitchik did a very interesting thing. He might not have been the first one to ever notice this, but he's the most famous for it. It's this. In the book of Genesis, there are 2 creation accounts, the creation of the human being. There's Genesis 1, where God says, let us make humankind in our own image, and we will create them, and they will exercise dominion, and they will subdue the earth, and they will take mastery of this creation. So in other words, God says, I've created, now I need someone to really hold it in place and make something of it. And so that's Adam 1. Adam 1, as you'll see on your sheet, subdue the earth, exercise dominion. We're in the image of God. We are to experience glory and success. That's the human being. And the human being asks questions like this. How does this world work so I can somehow take advantage of it and harness it? How can I achieve mastery of this universe? And it's not all bad. I mean, in some cases, it's not good, because those are the things that led to pollution, climate, all change, all those kind of things, because the human being went too far trying to master the universe. But it also has things like, well, how do we make this world safer and better? Well, we get into medicine.
Amen. That's the first thing I was thinking of.
We have discoveries. What is this thing that's killing people? It's called cancer. Well, how do we now master and harness cancer in a way where people will live long? So in other words, the human being is told to go out and do. That's Adam 1.
Hi.
Hey!
Welcome.
So Adam 2, wasn't there a TV show about Adam 1, or what was it?
Adam 12.
Adam 12.
Oh, the police show.
What was it? They were like in a
It was a Siri voice. It seemed to be the same dispatcher every season.
Yeah, that was the phone number.
Adam 12. And this is in Genesis 2. It's a whole different way of looking how God created the human beings. It wasn't all of that other stuff. It wasn't about making the human being in God's image. God in Genesis 2 took the dust of the earth, the clay. Clay and dust and clay in Greek is humus. We get human being from it. We are from dust. And Nancy, when she puts the ashes on, you are dust, and to dust you shall return. It's a reminder that we are just people of the earth. We're just basically inanimate until in Genesis 2, God forms the dust, and then God breathes life into it. Breathes life. God does into dust. And the human being comes about. And so think of the vast difference between being created in God's image. In Genesis 1, Adam 1, we're going to be like God. We're going to be creators. We're going to go out and master this universe. We're going to exercise control. We're going to subdue the earth. Genesis 2 is much more humble. And humility actually comes from the same word, humus, which is human being, where it's dust, and we owe life completely to God. Our life breath comes from God. Yeah.
What if Adam 1 was a prototype? No, what I mean by that is like, you know what I mean? Like, for instance, that, you know, we're given an opportunity. Everything was just great. And the part about hiding when he came back after they did, you know, what they shouldn't have done. And they clearly knew it. And then, so I guess what I'm saying is it's like the prototype in the sense that the mind was, you know, like, unless they stay focused on Christ, you know, they're gonna do.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And we're gonna get there before long. So now, because Adam 2 has this dynamic going on in him or her, and it's not Adam like a male gender. It's the human being, because Adam actually comes from the Hebrew word Adamah, and Adamah is so
Human.
yeah. So even the name Adam actually has a Greek, Hebrew meaning, which is dust. So here you have something different, and because this Adam is animated, brought to life by God, God is this ongoing, constant question in this mode of existence. Who is God? Where did my life come from? Where is my life going? When this life breath is taken from me, then what? Am I done? Or do I have a destiny beyond this? Because the same God from whom life came is there life beyond this once the breath is taken. So this Adam is asking questions. And you know, what is this world that God created? I'm not here to master it and take control of it. God just wants me to fit into it and find my place and carry out my life, not trying to be glorious and successful, but just carry out my life and fit into this world. Because fundamentally, not only am I animated by God, but I'm part of this world. And so how do I fit in rather than take control? So can you see the very different kind of modes of existence that you have here? And so you have people experiencing God in different ways. So people who are Adam 1 people. I'm going to have Adam 12. Adam 12, Adam 12.
Wait a minute. One Adam 12.
Yeah.
One.
I mean, I only heard it like
That's right.
That's right. One Adam 12.
doing my homework.
So you'll see this in people's experience of God, believe it or not. Some people are Adam 1 type people. I'm into politics. I don't like the way this world is functioning. And I am going to strive and try to change this world so that this world is a better world. I don't like the fact that things are not completely in place in this world. I am going to take charge, and I'm going to get involved, and I'm going to change things. And so Adam 1 tends to be very cause oriented. What is our cause? And let's strive together to accomplish this cause. Adam 1. Now, for some of you, that may be it. And Soloveitchik says that's okay because both accounts in Genesis have some validity. They're there for a reason, to say the human being is created not to just sit back and let things just fall apart, but to get involved and to make change and to do things. So for some people, your experience of God might be very much like that. We're gonna undertake a cause, and we're gonna change the world.
Yeah, you're Adam 1 and Adam 2 at the same, not at the same time. Sometimes you're Adam 1 and sometimes you're Adam.
There you go.
Yeah.
Aren't we? Yeah. And so it's not an either or, it's a both and. But the truth is, and if we're going to, maybe we will at the end of it, do like we normally do, Adam 1 and Adam 2, where do you fall in? And we're gonna say, well, I may be more in there. So, but we are both, absolutely.
Yes.
But for Soloveitchik, everything had become so Adam 1 oriented in the 1960s when he wrote this and saw, what is an Adam 2 who's curious about life? Where does he go or she go? Because nobody seems to be interested because everybody's trying to conquer the world. So some people might be Adam 2 people. Soloveitchik is unapologetically a Adam 2 type. Somebody who's just fascinated by what is life? Why is there a universe? I mean, is all it is to try to acquire as much as you can, to control as much as you can? Isn't there more to it than this? How do I fit in? What's my purpose in this universe? Who is this God who created me? And how do I experience this God? What is my destiny? So he's asking very different questions, very curious. And in his day, it was seen as kind of laughable. Who needs that? You know, what matters is what are we accomplishing? What are we changing in this world? We're supposed to make this world better. He's like, no, I just want to be in relationship with God and to experience my life with something more than just how can I try to beat out somebody else or change this world, just to relate. I mean, don't you remember back in the days, the reason why they built front porches in houses is why?
So people could visit with others that are walking by or.
Just
Fellowship,
yeah. You're just out there and you're not trying to accomplish anything,
not
right?
writing.
Are you trying to change the world? No, you're just enjoying the life you have and seeing other people who've been given this gift of life as well. And they're walking by and it's, hey, how are you? Know, so there's more to life than just causes and accomplishing and subduing the earth and exercising dominion. There's also, what is life? And is life not, isn't life more than just all that? I'm in this world, I've got this gift of life, so do other people. And how do we relate to each other? So Adam 2 was more interested in that, what we're talking about there, than Adam 1. Soloveitchik says, a great way to describe Adam 1 is an assembly line at the Ford plant, where all the men or women are side by side and they're building cars. And their community and their relationship is in the task. We're building cars. And I'm in relationship with other people who are building cars with me. And our job is to build cars. And he would say, Adam 2 is much more interested in not what are we accomplishing together, but why are we here and who are we? And I want to know who you are. And I want to know and talk with you about what are you seeing in life? What are you experiencing? What have your profound experiences of life been? And I might say, well, when I lost my mother or whatever it is. And you hear these stories and you're saying, wow, so life is fragile. But, you know, I lost my mother too. And suddenly you have this common ground of experiences not of success, but often of pain and sorrow. But in that pain and sorrow, you experience community. So you got two very different types of community. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's nodding their head. What I've seen during the time that I have been in ministry, or been alive pretty much, certainly in the 80s and 90s, churches definitely started becoming, what is our cause? What is our purpose? What is our mission? What are we going to do together? How are we going to change this world? Whereas some of us might have grown up in churches more where we knew Mrs. McGillicuddy at the end of the pew, and we knew her joys and sorrows, where we experienced people sharing what their faith experiences were when all was lost, but then somehow there was this remarkable intervention of God and so forth. And so Adam 1 is more interested in achievement. Adam 2 is more interested in redemption. How have I been redeemed? How has my loss somehow been turned into success? Which is, and I'm sorry, I always refer to 12-step groups. They go and they tell their stories. Woke up every morning for years, and the first thing I would do is check the bottle at the side of my bed to see how much there was. And when I could see there was only one swallow and I didn't have any money, I panicked. And then suddenly I just decided my life is a mess. I gave it over to God, and now I'm free from all of that. And they're describing a redemption story. And all of those people have fellowship in their common redemption. So that would be more of an Adam 2 kind of community. Whereas Adam 1 is, what have we accomplished? Have we changed the world around us? What causes do we still need to undertake in order to take on this world? Never mind all of that touchy-feely kumbaya stuff. We're going to go and we're going to conquer the world. And so you see how you've got two very different ways of experiencing. And if nobody was undertaking causes, the world would be going down the toilet.
Yeah,
And,
I personally am more of a Adam 2, but without the other one, they both complement each other. I think it's part of the duality of the human
exactly.
experience. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need both. And so now we're back to what they call the dialectic or the
Well,
tension.
you have the tangible in one and the intangible in the other. There's the doing and then there's the result. We just want the result. And what's interesting is you're right. Ultimately, you're looking for the tangible, but you have to do the other. You have to do the Adam 2. Meaning that's how you're going to get to that result.
Well, and the one thing I've experienced in 31, 32 years of ministry is you're going to have Adam 2 and Adam 1 mentalities in every church. Adam 1 people are like, what's the balance in our checkbook? If we don't have good balance in the checkbook, then this is all a big failure. And others will say, yeah, but if we're not in relationship with God and loving each other and experiencing something spiritual, not just financial or structural buildings, we're in effect dead. So you've got this tension that goes on in churches, and
I think this church is a good balance between both. We have our causes, we have, like the hunger action program that we do. But we also have the personal relationships with each other and care about what people are going through in their lives and stuff.
so you need the both end.
Yeah.
So are you understanding a little bit? This is theological anthropology. A big fancy word to say, what does it mean to be a human being in relationship to God? That's and it's not anthropological theology. It's so the main thing is the noun. The adjective is theological. The noun is anthropology. So the main thing is who's a human being, and now in relationship to God. And so now we're talking about both of these. So there you have a way to start to think yourself about, now, how do I experience God, and what for me constitutes a profound experience, and when did I have such a thing? So those are the kind of things you can talk about on our last day together. Soloveitchik concludes his story because he's really somebody whose heart is broken. And he is a lonely man of faith, just like Adam too was lonely, because he was finding few people in his time who were really interested in talking about, why are we here? Who is God? What have my experiences of God been? Tell me your experience of God, because I need to know. I want to know. He was finding fewer and fewer of those. And he wrote this book. He said, basically at the beginning, I'm writing this because it's therapeutic. because if I keep it stuck inside myself, I'm just wasting away. I'm seeing this world lose relationship with God because it's all caught up in all of this Adam 1 glory, success, dominion, power kind of stuff. And he was calling people back in his day to a relationship with God. He concludes with the story of Elisha in 2 Kings. So in 2 Kings, there's two prophets, Elijah and Elisha. Elijah eventually turns the mantle over to Elisha, who then becomes the main prophet of Israel. And he says, the story of Elisha is interesting because when Elijah finds Elisha he's tending all of his crops and taking care of all of his cattle. He's trying to acquire more wealth. He's exercising dominion over all of his servants and slaves. He's a powerful man. He's known throughout the world for his wealth.
Number one.
Okay, so he was an Adam 1. And Elijah comes and says, okay, my time is up. Now you're going to take over. And he says there's this immediate change that takes place in Elisha, where he becomes now not concerned about his cattle, about his servants, about his power, but he is now in relationship with God. And his task will be to communicate to the people of Israel who are turning away from this God, Jehovah, Yahweh, who this God is and what this God means and why Israel even exists. So he has this immediate change from an Adam 1 to an Adam 2. And the story of Elisha is one of someone who becomes lonely. Because like all the prophets, like Jesus as well, the people don't really care. Because they care about where's my next meal coming from? What am I going to wear? How can I acquire more wealth? How can I have a little bit of control over life? Most people are concerned with that. Or they're talking about, that Caesar in Rome, and they're talking about politics and all of this. They don't care about these deeper questions or these higher questions. The questions about why are we here? Why is there a universe? Who is it who's in charge of all of this? And how do I relate to them? And can I learn from others who are relating? And now Elisha has the task of doing that. And he says, Soloveitchik laments, Elisha was laughed at. Elisha was persecuted. Elisha was misunderstood. But in the process, he, the lonely man of faith, discovered relationship with the lonely one who is God. The one who created, who is unseen, and who is fundamentally ignored or dismissed by most people. And it's from God that the life of those people come from, and they couldn't care less. I mean, in our day, what do people care about? Social media. Did the Celtics win last night? How much money do I have? What can I acquire? Those kind of things. And they're not really answering those questions. So Soloveitchik kind of concludes, and I can almost see the old guy wiping a tear from his eye. Oh, to be a lonely man of faith is lonely indeed. But it is then when we finally discover companionship with the lonely one, who brought all things into being and who has ever since been mostly ignored or dismissed. And when that one who was ignored and dismissed sends lonely men or lonely women of faith, they're basically laughed at and ignored and dismissed, just like God is. And so he kind of wipes that tear. And I would say, to be a companion of the lonely God, if I were to give you my experience of faith and of God, it would be that of Elisha and that of Soloveitchik. I'm so thankful that you are all here, because I'm a lonely man of faith.
Amen. Me too.
I know that most people, I don't know that people go away laughing at me, but I know that most people might say, wow, a lot of those kind of things don't really matter to me. What matters to me are the causes and those kind of things. But for whatever reason, there's the fire in my belly and in my heart and in my mind to know, who is this who created me? Who is this that's involved in my life? What is my destiny? Why is there a universe? How do I fit into it? Asking those questions. And I came to a point where it doesn't say, I wouldn't say that I like it, but I've come to accept it. That if this is my lot in life, so be it. Because lonely men and lonely women of faith are scarce and rare, but they surface throughout history. And that's my story. So, but I thank you for sharing, because as I told you last week, I mean, I'm an Adam too, and to be with people who are at least curious means a lot to me. So that's an experience I have. Okay, so we got a few minutes, and Bill alluded to this earlier. Okay, so what is now you talk about that three-letter word that nobody likes to say anymore, sin. How did I describe that? Broken rules or broken relationships or what?
Relationship.
Okay, it's relationships. Okay, so breaking relationships is fundamentally it, because to break the relationship with God is the definition truly of sin at its most profound level. Yes, you break rules, but fundamentally you break relationships and you bring disorder into God's good order. I haven't talked about it in a while, but once I said, here's my example, shopping carts. People don't return the darn shopping carts. Now, there's an unwritten rule, thou shalt take your shopping cart, put your groceries in your car, and then go to the corral and put your carriage, I guess you say. In Chicago, we said shopping carts. Put it there. And when people don't observe that simple rule, chaos enters into the grocery store parking lot. Relationships are shattered because people no longer trust each other or care about each other. And there's all kinds of problems that go beyond just breaking the rules. You don't break a rule, but breaking relationships and bringing disorder into the world is really what sin is. And so when people get all caught up on, thou shalt not do this, you can't do that. Why? Because at some level, it harms your relationship with God and with other people and brings disorder into God's orderly world. So,
Good.
So
can I just say that it's real quick, what you just said? It's not like we don't know that. That's very important, I think, to bring to the point.
Yeah.
It's not like we don't know what you just said, but some choose to do it anyway. Just wanted to throw that in. So there, there is an opportunity to not let that happen.
What is it about human nature that somehow will want to transgress the rules?
That's what I'm saying.
Just for the sake of transgressing the rules, just to say that, hey, nobody's going to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So, okay, so Adam 1's sin basically plays out in Genesis 11, where, I think you talked about this, Bill had brought it up. Okay, somebody who's supposed to subdue the earth, exercise dominion, starts to think about it's all about me, rather than me being a steward of God's creation and trying to make it better. And so in Genesis 11, what happens is these Adam 1 type people who want to take over the world, who want to exercise dominion, and who want power decide, we're going to build a high tower. And this tower is going to reach into the heavens. And we're going to make a name for ourselves. And all the world will see our high tower. And they will glorify us because this is what we have accomplished. And God said, oops, bad idea. You left relationship with me, and now your power and your dominion and subduing the earth is about your benefit, not mine. They have left the relationship with God and gone their own way.
Is that not, excuse me, isn't that what we're experiencing right now in our world? Just what you said? Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Just what you said.
People want to make names for it. But you know what? It's an interesting thing also to say we are trying to make a name for ourselves because that is where our well-being is. Now, Bob Converse will disagree with me, but I like to listen to classical music when I drive. I don't understand classical music. Most of it I don't really like. But there are some that I really do. I really like some classical music. And I'm listening today to Mozart, Bach, and Beethoven on my way here to Worcester today. And I'm thinking, now isn't this interesting? Each one of those did a creative act. I want to make the world, I'm going to make music. I'm going to create. I'm going to do something because, that's the way the human being is. We're creators. But the interesting thing is all of them are dead. They no longer exist. But their work goes on. Okay, so the work goes on. I don't write anything. You
don't go on my radio.
It won't go. Yeah, Bob's radio just shuts off automatically when classical music comes on. And I'm thinking, yeah, and that's a good thing because when Bach would compose, he would at the bottom of his composition say "Solo Gloria Deo," only for the glory of God. Did he do his work? So he was being a faithful Adam 1, creating to glorify God, not himself. But I'm thinking, how many people in this world are doing things so that it will outlive them? I've left my mark on the world, and all the world will remember me. You go to hospitals. This is the Anderson Pavilion, and the money was given by Mr. Anderson 2 generations ago. And why did Mr. Anderson do it? Well, sure, he wanted people to have a hospital to go to, but he wanted to make darn sure they named it after him so that he would live on. And that is a way of living, sort of saying, my extended life beyond this life is determined by the mark I make in the world and how people observe it after me, rather than staying in relationship with God, who is my destiny beyond this. You get what I'm saying? So Adam, one thing is when you start to do something for yourself, for your own glory, to make a mark on the world, and that's sin. And what God did was, because they said, we're going to have one language, everybody's going to speak our language, we're going to keep the world unified, we're going to have glory, and God scattered them everywhere and confused their language. That's why you get babbling. Babbling comes from Babel, Tower of Babel, which means confusing speech. And the way that's turned around, certainly, is twofold. In Jesus, who did not come to glorify himself, but humbled himself and took the form of a servant. And being found in human form, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him highly, gave him a name above every name. Then at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth. So Jesus did not take the way of making a name for himself, but humbled himself in ways that Adam 1 did not. And it is in Jesus that people find God gave him a name, and we find our life in him. And then the second one would be Pentecost. What happened on Pentecost Sunday? And what happened with all the languages? They were no longer confused. Everybody was hearing in their own language, native language. And so they would say that God reversed the curse, as you say, that happened here. When they try to make a name for themselves and God confused the language, now God is bringing all things together. So Adam 2's sin is also breaking relationship. Yes. When in a sense they broke the command, but they really were breaking the relationship. They were taking their trust away from God, because in the Garden of Eden, Eve and Adam see the apple, and the serpent says, God said you're not supposed to eat from this? Really? Eat God, because God knows that if you eat this, your eyes will be opened, and you will become like God, and you will not die. So suddenly, they had gone from the breath of life. Remember, Adam 2 was dust with God's breath. Not trusting in God for their life, the breath, but now trusting in their own ways. They broke relationship. And what ends up happening from this is God doesn't break relationship with them. God goes and finds them. Where are you? And now God remains faithful in a relationship even when they do not.
Their conscience kicked in, excuse me, at that point.
Mhm.
Clearly, when they were hiding, when they knew, like that was the point I was making about it's a choice.
Mhm.
Amazing how instantaneously disobeying can do that. Just nobody else knows but you, but it was eating at them because of what's inside. What's
Yeah.
inside is.
Well, who understands the human heart? Jeremiah said, it is corrupt beyond measure. So with the way Christ does this, and Paul talks about this in Adam in 1 Corinthians 15 and in Romans 5, the first Adam went astray. First, now not Adam 1, but the first, and it came from this, disobeyed, and tried to find life in himself, for himself. But now a second Adam has come along, a second human being. That is Jesus, who gave his life and trusted that God would raise him. So life did not grasp for himself, but remained faithful to the end, always in relationship with God, and God raised him. So the Soul of Egypt doesn't talk about that in his book because he was Jewish and he wouldn't talk about Jesus. But there is a Christian answer to when Adam, because even, I'm sure maybe 10 times a day already, me, a lonely man of faith, Adam 2 person, has probably kind of turned my own way a little bit in my own thoughts, in my own ways, and broken relationship rather than just remaining calmly trusting God. And so Jesus did not. And so my life, my destiny is found in Jesus, not in myself. And that guarantees the promise that I have a destiny, not because of how good I was, but because how faithful Jesus was. And so that's the Christian message and answer to that.
That was powerful, not how good you were. That's really the most powerful thing you could say when you think about your life, understanding that.
Mm-hmm.
What you do, it's not what you do.
Well, you know what else I've heard a lot of times over the years? Not just, I don't believe in God. And then I say, well, tell me about the God you don't believe in. They're like, wow, I never thought of it. People will say, I'm not good enough, and God won't accept me. And I will have to say, and the light bulb goes off and smiles come to their faces. I will say, the Christian message is, it's not about how good you are, but how good God is. And how good Jesus was, and your life is found in him. And those who who put their faith and belief in Jesus as their righteousness, not in their own, are the ones justified by God. So I'm not good enough. When I say that, they're like, but it's true. I'm not good enough.
You pull away instead of trying to, right? Yeah. Instead of promote it, let them figure it out.
Well, we've reached the 1 hour point, which is what I try to keep it to.
I just have a question.
Yes.
In the last paragraph, about the third line down, you said, we relate to God through X. I'm a math
X.
minor. Who's X?
Okay.
Oh.
That's what seminarians who took Greek, shorthanded will say
That
Christ.
the old Twitter?
Oh.
Because in Greek, the CH is just one letter. It's chi, which is X.
Oh.
So it's like when people will say Xmas, and they'll be like, you've taken Christ out of it. Maybe, but maybe it's also a shorthand way of saying Christ.
Oh.
So that's, yeah. Well, you never went to seminary? So that's our relationship. And so my experience of God is often in my own unworthiness rather than otherwise. So I'm an Adam 2 person. Adam 2, interesting thing, and I know somebody who's viewing it or might get mad. I don't necessarily view a lot of the Genesis stories as historical accounts, but just profound stories that convey a profound truth. And so the way that Eve comes about is not because Adam has accomplished something great, but in Genesis 2, God put Adam into a deep sleep, and he was almost as dead, unconscious. And God took from Adam his own rib. And from this rib, God created a companion who is Eve. And Soloveitchik, I think, rightly says, the thing about Adam 2 is his victory comes from his defeats. He was put into a sleep, almost as good as dead. And he had to sacrifice and give up something in order to acquire something, which is a helper, Eve, a companion. And so Adam 2, defeat, is victory. Why? Because God raises the dead, because God is in all things working them together for good. and that's redemption. I remember one time, here I go again, I was in an AA meeting, open AA meeting, and the group was using the church I was serving, open night, so anybody could attend. And one guy chronicled his entire life and all the messes he made in this world. He lost his job, he lost his family, he lost all of these things, and eventually he just hit bottom. But out of that, he gave his life over to God, to a higher power, and his life has changed since, and his life has come together. And he says, I'm not trying to glorify myself. I'm simply trying to say that the only way I could get to where I am now is the way I took. And so it was out of all of those defeats and finally recognizing it and no longer trying to have life of my own, that now I'm finally experiencing victory. But defeat was definitely a part of it. And Adam 2 is someone who experiences defeat. Adam 1 doesn't. Adam 1, he wins every time. He's subduing the earth. He's exercising dominion. He's changing the world. Of course, there might be some frustrations in there, but by and large, he's oriented toward victory. Adam 2 understands that sometimes the only way to get to victory is through defeat. It's through the recognition how dependent we are on something other than ourselves.
Amen.
And this may not be your experience, and this might not be something you would talk about 2-3 weeks from now, but for many people it is. My most profound experience of God, some people will say, is when I was utterly defeated. And from that, I started to experience new life because I was no longer trying to do it myself. I was relying on power beyond myself. It wasn't my power. It wasn't me trying to change the world. It was something changing me. And out of that, I have experienced God and experienced life. So you get so when we start talking about what are our experiences, I mean, I'm trying to bring to your awareness all the experiences we have. And you know, we pointed out that we do undertake causes. We do try to make the world better. And that's good because that's how God created human beings, but God didn't do just that. There's also the other side to it. Anybody have any thoughts?
Just a quick thought about people that had a lot of money, whoever, and chose to donate so their name lives on forever.
Mhm.
And there's those, as it was intended, that will never know, that have done so much for so many, and none of us know about it. And that's kind of like, that's leaning more towards the relationship part, that's all that matters. If it wasn't for us knowing about Mother Teresa, she could have done everything she did for God. What you thought?
Well, I haven't used this in a while, but there was a music director at one of the churches I served who had spent some time as a younger man. He's deceased now. He would probably be 100 at this point. In somewhere in Asia, where he said, and in that culture, they had two different ways of describing a dead person. There's dead, and then there's really dead. And then these are English words, but they meant basically that. He said, dead means someone's just passed away. But there are a lot of people left who remember that person. So in a sense, that person still kind of lives on in the memory of all the people, right? So the person is dead, but we all remember and we can talk about that person. Well, what happens when all of us die and there's nobody left to talk about him? That's when that person becomes really dead. And so for them, what was profound when they came to Christianity and in his missionary work was they now understood that even though all people on earth forget about him, they don't have any hospitals named after them, their music is not played on the classical music stations, they're really dead, but they're known to God.
Amen.
And so fundamentally, our destiny is in that relationship with God. And when you're in relationship with God, your destiny is good because even on earth, you may be really dead, but with God and in God, you are alive eternally. So
that's what's going to matter the most, as far as I can see, unless somebody can tell me I'm missing something here. That's what's going to matter the most.
So I do thank you for being with me, this lonely man of faith. Thank you for your interest in things other than just the practical, the spiritual as well. So I hope I'm also giving you some things that you can think about when you share your own experience. Oh, sorry.
What, Nance? What, Nance?
It's, my head is full.
Isn't that awesome? Huh?
Yeah, it's good. It's a good one, yeah.
We have a man here.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
We met here, we're going to
Oh, yeah?
yeah. Because he did so much after he retired.
Oh.
Well, you know what's interesting? Can I just say,
Schofield Wing.
when you say he did, so you know what's interesting is I was kind of hearing from Doug. Gene lived a life where that's who he was. So when we think about conceptually, like he did things, but Gene was Gene, and he did right, and he was consistent his whole life. So to him, it wasn't. He really wasn't doing anything, right? He was just being Gene Schofield.
Yeah.
And he dreamed.
And his relationship with.
Yeah.
Okay.
He also flew with a bigger.
Really?
Yes, he
That's
did.
another story.
How about his 100th party out in Fisher Hall? And he's like, unbelievable.
All right, so you go back into the world, think it from time to time, in this day and the days ahead. Is this an Adam 1 mode of existence, or am I in Adam 2? So, and if you want, Google 1 Adam 12. And see what that all is. So thanks to all of you at home for viewing, and thanks to all here you gave some companionship to a lonely